Let's now turn our attention to the United States, where next year's election may be a very hot political battle for the #1 seat. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has again been blocked from being part of the election in the state of Maine over alleged complicity in the U.S. Capitol riot in 2021. This comes after his recent blocking by a Colorado court from being part of the election in the state come 2024. We have a report.
In the United States, a constitutional insurrection clause cited by a top election official in the state of Maine has ruled that former U.S. President Donald Trump cannot run for president in the state next year. Secretary of State Shenna Bellows says Mr. Trump is not eligible because of his actions leading up to the U.S. Capitol riot in 2021. Maine now joins Colorado as the two states to ban Mr. Trump from the 2024 election. Their decisions increase pressure on the U.S. Supreme Court to weigh in. The state of Colorado is reportedly more democratic, but the state of Maine is more politically competitive and would be more significant for the Republican frontrunner, Mr. Donald Trump, to lose. Mr. Trump's campaign office has already said it will lodge an appeal in the state's courts against the Maine ruling, which cannot take effect while the legal process plays out. Hours after Maine's decision, California, America's most populous state, announced that Mr. Trump would remain on the Republican primary ballot there. Courts in other states, including Michigan and Minnesota, have also recently dismissed efforts to block Mr. Trump from running as a candidate.
As far as the joke of an indictment, it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing for this country. I mean, the only good thing about it is it's driven my poll numbers way up. Can you believe that? Way up. Now it's driven up, way up, and somebody said the fundraising is through the roof. That's less important. But I will tell you, it's really driven us right through the sky. We're really winning big. We're winning by we're beating the hell out of the Republicans, and we're beating the hell out of Joe Biden. That's why they're doing it. If I wasn't, let me tell you, if I wasn't, there'd be no witch hunt. There'd be no indictment.
The U.S. Supreme Court will make the ultimate decision as to whether Mr. Trump can run for president or whether he is ineligible because of a Civil War-era amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
For more on this development, global affairs analyst Ejike Okwa joins me now via Zoom from Dallas, Texas. Thank you for joining us on World Now. First, Colorado, now Maine, have decided that Donald Trump cannot stand for re-election in their states. What's your reaction to that?
Well, thank you for having me. It's a good laugh. It's a joke. I think, some of these people just get together and decide what it is they're going to do. The court has convicted Mr. Trump of insurrection. So what this Secretary of State, in the various states are doing with their own Supreme Court is just a joke. Like Mr. Trump said, he's giving him more popularity, he's raising more money, but those things don't matter. But we need to have the ultimate say. And that ultimate ruling is going to come from the U.S. Supreme Court. In fact, Colorado has reversed itself because the Republican Party of Colorado appealed and they have changed their own ruling. So, Maine is a tiny state. Regardless of that, we still need the electoral votes that are going to come from there when it's all said and done. So the point is, I'm sure and I'm happy that the rest of the world is looking at it and they can see how interference can be an issue when the other side.
Well, if you call it an interference, Mr. Okpa, you're calling it an interference. You've said this, coming from Maine is a joke, and they are definitely not seeing it that way, because this is the Constitution at work. They consider that Donald Trump is, complicit in events leading to the riots, Capitol Hill, and that insurrection. So do you as an individual consider that someone who is accused of that actually eligible to vie for election, to represent and lead the entire American people?
Of course he is. Like I said, nobody has convicted him for that accusation or allegation. No court has convicted him. He has not been tried. It is a federal matter. No federal, even DOJ has not filed any formal charges against him as a result of that. So no state has a constitutional right, but they can do what they do, and all it's doing is, giving the...
And it does appear there's a lot of pressure now on the Supreme Court to step into the matter. Do you see that happening? Right, it appears we lost connection with Ejike Okpa. We'll try to reconnect with him and get more perspective on developments in the U.S., where the state of Maine has now blocked Donald Trump from being part of the election in the state over alleged complicity in the U.S. Capitol Hill riot in 2021. Away from that, but still in the U.S., lawmakers around the U.S. allegedly being targeted by hoax calls known as swatting. Police rushed to the home of Florida Senator Rick Scott after receiving a hoax call that a gunman had killed his wife at the scene. And Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene said she was swatted on Christmas Day with her family present. Most of the swatting calls this week appeared to target Republican officials, but some Democrats were also targeted, such as Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, who also had a SWAT team called to her home on Christmas. Ms. Greene, a prominent conservative supporter of Republican frontrunner Donald Trump, said on social media it was just the latest in a series of hoax calls against her. Authorities say swatting, which is making prank calls to emergency services to deploy a SWAT team, has grown in popularity. All right, we understand Mr. Okpa is back. All right, I was asking about whether you think the Supreme Court could step in, because there seems to be a lot of pressure on the court to come in.
Well, I mean, because of the national interest of what's going on, the Supreme Court obviously is going to take the case and make a ruling, and that ruling has to come fast. Because, come March of next year, when the primaries start happening. So, by January or something, by January after the 1st, we're going to see, these cases going to the Supreme Court, and they will make a decision. And then Trump will decide, we know, where he stands. But, majority of states still are going to have him on their ballot. California has decided, the largest most populous state in America, largely Democratic, but they still, are going to have him on the ballot. So, Colorado, Maine, and some other tiny states that are trying to, get their own fame in the news, in the wrong move, they're not going to derail. Texas was even thinking, oh, okay, fine, if they're going to do this, we're just going to deny Biden not being on the ballot. But, we don't want to see stuff like that.
All right, I hear you. And if you do listen to what Mr. Trump has said, he spoke about the fact that these allegations are actually driving his poll number up, and that fundraising is actually going through the roof. But then, would you say poll numbers are actually a reflection of the will of the American people? Because if you look back at a situation when Donald Trump was contesting against Hillary Clinton, the polls were actually pitching Hillary Clinton to win the ballot, but it didn't go that way.
I'm not a polls guy. I mean, the poll is just, a spot kind of thing. Both people polled. It probably maybe 1,000 or less, and they use that sample. Statistically, it's not a very good representation of the ultimate outcome. But it still shows, since Trump announced his interest to run again, he has been leading every Republican that has jumped in. No Republican is coming close. But the New Hampshire thing is going to happen the earliest in the whole exercise, and he's going to win it, even though Nikki Haley and DeSantis are flexing and thinking that they're going to come close. They're not. And when that happens, they're going to drop out. So the thing now we want to see happen is that the U.S. Supreme Court comes in and gives a final ruling on some of these antiquated, out of date, not relevant law that happened after the Civil War.
All right.
And then that will put it to bed. And we're not going to have to deal with this anymore. But again, it's a matter of wrong prosecution.
All right, let's see if the Supreme Court would step in and when that would happen. Global Affairs Analyst Eji Kirpa, thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.